Welcome to the Righteous Talk Show. I am your host, Jody, the Righteous Warrior. There is no better way to start or end your day than with the Word of God. The Word of God is a two-edged sword that cuts through joints and marrow. So we have to use the Word accordingly in our everyday lives to get results. Now, today's topic we'll be talking about wealth and inheritance and how it applies to generational wealth. How we can have generational wealth to where the next generation is not struggling to even have a place to live or food to eat. A lot of people think that having wealth or getting wealth is just something that is overnight is accumulated overnight. Wealth is not it's not accumulated overnight. If you get it overnight, you will lose it overnight. So, even in building wealth, things takes time. It takes time to put it together, assess it, generate income, passive income. It takes time. It takes years sometimes. Sometimes it can be a quick start and sometimes it can take time depending on the demand and supply. These are things that people have to know and understand before they get into doing business, demand and supply. And along with it have faith that it will work out. Now, when you look at the significance of how wealth is produced, most people will say it's through hard labor. In the beginning, yes, you have to put in the work in the beginning. But once there's a footing held, things become a little easier down the line. Now, I'm a little bit ticked off. I'm a little bit irritated by the things, the ignorance that I have been seeing and hearing, along with my own personal issues. I'm not exempt just because I have God. I have my own personal issues. But at the same time, people have to understand that when it comes to God, you have to put God in the midst of everything, including your finances. Now, I've been hearing people talking about, well, I know people have six figures and they don't have no money and they're always broke. Just because a person makes six figures does not necessarily mean they are wealthy or they're rich. And just because you might see a person may have something that looks tangible, it still also doesn't mean that they have money. It's all about how you manage the money. You can get $1,000 a day, and $1,000 can buy a house and a car. And you go ahead and buy a house and a car, but in the end, you have nothing in your pocket to show for it. But yet, still, you can still have $1,000 and invest it and still not have any money in your pocket. But when you invest that $1,000, you have equity, you have a profit being made elsewhere. And that is the beginning of generating wealth. A lot of rich people that you see walking around, wealthy people, their pockets, they don't have any money in there. Sometimes they're drowning in debt just to make something come alive to sustain something in the future. Sometimes when wealth is being built, the generation that built it does not see a profit from that wealth being built. So when people get some money, they want to see an instant return on investment, when a lot of the time it's not instant. It's over a period of time you will see a profit. Over a period of time, you will see some changes in the finances. And while getting the finances, you will now see you will now see a little bit of change over time. You will see a little bit of elevation in the finances over time. And depending on how you spend, you have to be aware of your debt to income ratio. This is why when you go for a credit or a credit check or something, they check your debt to income. How much debt do you have? How many bills do you have? How much money do you need? How much you can afford to spend? How much you can pay per month? And if you cannot pay that amount per month to pay back your debt, they're not giving you that loan because you can't pay it back. Your debt is higher than your income. So just because people have money in their pocket does not necessarily mean that they're wealthy. You got people that have money in their pocket and they owe a lot of people out there in the streets. So you can't be watching another person's pocket. Now, that's one account taken. Now, when it comes to parents, I know a lot of people, they love their parents and they want to give their parents everything, and they want to make sure that their parents are okay and their parent is not wanting for anything. There's nothing absolutely wrong with that. As long as they're living and they can move and do what they need to do, they should be fending for themselves. You are not supposed to be fending for your parents. It's the other way around. Now, I want to share the prodigal son, and this is in Luke 15, and it's starting from verse 11 to 32. And I'm just going to quote the story, and it's the story of the prodigal son. And this is why I always tell people, I said, look, until you die or until your child passes away, God forbid, but until you as a parent pass away, you are solely responsible for your child. Parents are to leave an inheritance for their children. Parents are to take care of their children until the day they close their eyes, meaning until the day they pass away. That's the role of a parent. Not because your child turns 18, that does not mean that your responsibility as a parent goes away. You are responsible for that child until your dying day. In Ruth, when it came to Ruth and Naomi, when Ruth's husband died and Orpah's husband died, which were both Naomi's sons, when they died, Naomi sent Ruth and Orpah back to their parents' house. So, if a woman's husband dies, she's supposed to go back to her parents' house. That does not exclude them from being a parent. If something is not going right with your child as a parent, you are responsible for your child. You are responsible to pick up the slack. You are responsible no matter what they get themselves into. That child is your responsibility. That child, you should be taking care of that child. So when Naomi sent Ruth and Orpah back to their parents' house because that's who will be taking care of them. They don't have husbands to take care of them, so their parents have to take care of them. What is the difference now in this day and age to where parents want to flip the switch and have the children take care of them? Nowadays, parents are having children as a meal ticket. The other day, I was scrolling and I saw a lady with a newborn baby. And this is what she said: Thank God my tax, she says something about her tax dependent came on time. Her tax dependent arrived on time. I said, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. No, 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 no. This is sad. This is really sad. So people are having children to depend on their children as a dependent so they can get some money back for that child. How about they get up and go work? They're sitting depending on the government to give them something before they get up and go make something of their life so that when their children gets older, their children don't have to struggle. And this is the thing with colored people. They want to blame the white man and said the white man is taking from them, the white man is doing this, when in reality every one of us has a fair shot. Every single one of us, we might get a little bit of fight, but you got to put your elbow to the grease and get in and do what you got to do. You can't just sit there and wait for someone to come and spoon feed you and tell you, oh, it's going to be all right. No. And then you're going to say, well, black people don't have this and black people don't have that and black people don't get nothing. Look, I can talk because nobody never spoon fed me nothing. My parents did not come from a wealthy background, but yet still, they still got something. I still got my inheritance coming. God forbid I'm not waiting for it, because in that I still made my own. I don't have to depend and wait for my parents to close their eyes and go in their grave for me to have something. I got up and I worked and I made my way. So you can get up and make your way too and not wait on your parents for their inheritance. But in any sense, your parents is still responsible for you just in case of emergency. When you go to the hospital and if something goes wrong with you, who is your emergency contact? When you fill out that paper, who is your emergency contact? And they ask for their name, their number, and their relation to you. Even the government, the hospitals know this. Who is your next of kin? Who is this person related to you? And you will have to write mother, father, friend, such and such. And if they're not a next of kin, meaning a mother, a father, a sister, a brother, or a relative in some way, shape, or form, if that person that is on that paper is not a relative, they will have little to no say when you need medication or if they should pull the plug. So that goes to show that your parents are responsible for you in the case of emergency break glass. Call the parents. If you're not married. Now, if you're married, your husband or your wife will then have the say so of what to do, what medication for you to get, or if they should pull the plug, where you're going to stay, and all of this. So the parents, just because you got to 18 does not mean that the parents is exempt from taking care of their child or children. It is a lifelong thing. So when you go having children, you got to think about the expenses and what you have to do to make sure that child is groomed properly so that they can grow up and be a good product of society and not be a leech. Be an upstanding citizen and not be a leech. Not be a menace to society. Now, I'm going to quote some scriptures and I'm going to tell you where they're from, but I'm not going to read the scriptures. You can go ahead and look it up and I'll tell you where they're from. The prodigal son is another example. In the prodigal son, it's in Luke 15, verse 11 to verse 11. Let me check. Verse 11 to 32. So Luke 15, verse 11 to 32. And you will see where when the father gave the prodigal son his inheritance and he went about his business and went and spent off all that money, all of his inheritance that his father gave him. Mind you, his father is still alive. But his father gave him his inheritance while he was still alive because it's rightfully his. That inheritance is rightfully the son's. So the father gave him his inheritance and sent him on his way. Say, okay, you want to go? Here's your inheritance. Go do what you want to do with it. Now, if the prodigal son was smart, he would have took his inheritance and flipped it. Buy goat, buy sheep, buy cattle, buy a piece of land, buy whatever he needed and flip that money and make more on it. But no, that's not what the prodigal son did. He went and squandered it and then he got hungry. This is what a lot of people do when they come up on money. They don't won the lottery. They don't came up on some inheritance from a relative or whatever the case may be. They came up on some good change. But what they did, they went to the club. They went and bought Hennessy. They went and bought Cavassier. They went and bought all this kind of stuff and spending it all off on foolishness. Nothing that's going to be of substantial wealth to them. Nothing that is going to benefit them in any form of way, shape, or form. Nothing that will benefit them. Nothing that will make their life better. They don't spend that money on that. They go and they buy clothes, shoes, the latest cars and stuff. That's what they do. Things that will depreciate, things that will pass through the body. That's what they do. They go and they get these things. Now, a smart person, they would invest it. They will build a business, create jobs for other people, make themselves more money on top of what they have. Nowadays, you will call it flipping the money. But some people don't think about flipping money or making an investment. They don't think about that. They just want to go and play with friends and do what they want to do. Now, when it came to the prodigal son, that he spent all that money, all his inheritance, and now starving. The prodigal son is now starving. Guess what he did? He went back home to his father, and his father took him back with open arms. With open arms, the father took him back. Now, as a parent, like I was saying, it is until your dying day. It is until your dying day that you are responsible for your children. The age of consent physically is 18 or 21, but that does not mean that your responsibility as a parent has gone away. So your children will make mistakes. You know why? Because they are younger. Your children will make mistakes because they weren't taught the right way by their parents. They will make mistakes, and sometimes they have to make mistakes to learn and know what's right from wrong. Now, let's look at 1 Timothy 5. Hmm. 1 Timothy 5 and verse 8. And it says, anyone who does not provide for their relatives and especially for their own household has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. But let me read it from the King James Version. The King James Version made it more, it's more brutal in the King James Version. The NIV version, they just gave you a nice version. But hear what the King James Version says. But if any provide not for his own, and especially for those in his own house, he has denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. You can't say you are a child of God and you're not leaving an inheritance for your children. It is a crime. It's a spiritual crime. It is a crime. It is against the law. Listen to what Proverbs 13 also says. Proverbs 13, verse 22. So Proverbs 13, verse 22 says, a good man leaveth an inheritance to his children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. But let's stick with the first stanza. It says, a good man leaveth an inheritance to his children. Now, I'm not saying you're supposed to be going and cussing your parents and saying you ain't left me no inheritance. Sometimes they didn't know better, but that still is not a go ahead for them to do wrong. Because guess what? A lot of people think that inheritance is only money or physical things. No, it's not. An inheritance can be a skill, a trade, a business. So if you know how, if a father knows how to be a mechanic and he fixed vehicles really well, he may not be making a lot of money from being a mechanic, but he can teach his son, and his son will be the younger generation of a mechanic in that family. That father has done passed a skill on to the son that he can use to generate an income for himself and his family. It would have been worse if that father did not teach his son how to be a mechanic or how to be a farmer or how to be a tailor or how to be a herdsman. It would be way worse. So, whatever skill you know how to do, you teach it to your children and let them carry it on through that generation. Whether that child wants to pick it up or not, you know for yourself, for the sanctification and the saving of your own soul, that you have left an inheritance for your child, a skill that you have taught them. If you don't know how to do it, you make sure you send them somewhere to go and get that education. And that is part of giving your child an inheritance. Sometimes parents can give their children things that they themselves don't have. So, an inheritance is something that is passed down from one person to another. If you don't leave something for your children, you're not a good person. Don't ever call yourself a good person. Make sure you have something for your children and stop depending on your children as dependents to get some tax money back. That's the lowest of thinking. If you get that tax money back, the least you should be doing is using it to build a business to make some money, and not depending on it to go and buy new shoes and buy new purses and buy new the latest jewelry, buy the latest cars. No. And like I was saying before, this is the reason why this is the reason why people can't have nothing, because they spend their money on things that are not important, that's not going to give them anything beneficial or substantial for years and generations to come, for something to build in passive income to where they can have a regular 9 to 5 and then have another job or have a business on the side that's bringing in income. So you don't have to work as hard in your later years. It's either work now or play later, or play now and work later. My thing is work now and play later, because when I'm 45, 50, I'm not going to be on nobody's job. I'm not going to be slaving for nobody. I will not. I will not be slaving for nobody at 45. If I'm doing that, I'm going to be doing it for myself. And God forbid, at 45, 50, I should be done. I should be taking care of my family and kids by then. And you should too. Don't sit down when you get wealth or you get some money or you get an inheritance from a family member that passed away and left you a couple $1,000s. Use it and flip it. Make yourself debt free. Make yourself debt free. That's the only way to generate wealth. Now, having a credit card and using the credit card and paying it back, that's not generating debt. It becomes debt when you let it accumulate and you spend more than what you have. If you have the money with you, you use the credit card to build your credit, and then you use the money that you have in your pocket to pay it back. That's how you build your credit. You don't go out spending what you don't have, even though you have it on a credit card. You don't go spending what you don't have, or you can't see where the money is coming from. You don't do that, because now you're going to get yourself into debt and you can't get out, and you won't be able to leave anything for your children but debt. And leaving debt for your children to pay back is a crime. It's a crime in God's eyes. Hmm. So, one, teach your children a skill and make more money on top of it. They build more ideas on top of what you had already made and make the business better. If you can cook, teach your children to cook. Make a restaurant, build a business out of it. If you're a bread maker, make bread, teach your children how to make bread. Then make you a bakery. How do you think a lot of these big businesses came about? They didn't come up on some large money a lot of times. Sometimes they started from the bottom. They started in their own kitchen, in their own garage. And they grew through the generations and generations. They grew. It wasn't overnight. Easy come, easy go. All right. So until next time, I am your host, Jody, the Righteous Warrior. If you're not righteous, get righteous. God loves you. I love you. Until next time, ciao.